When listening to your speech, there's a high probability that your audience will get distracted at one point or another. You've done it. I've done it. We have those times when we're listening, and even when we're trying to pay attention, our mind wanders. Because of that, your audience members will get lost very easily throughout your speech. To help them come back, we use transition statements to pull our audience back in and let them know where we are. You might think of these as roadmaps. So at the beginning of your speech, you want to give a roadmap of where you're going. At the end of your speech, you want to give a roadmap of where you've been. And throughout the speech, you want to do little signposts. Just like when you're driving, you see little signs that say Oshkosh 5 miles, Oshkosh 2 miles. So as you're speaking, you might remind them, now that I've talked about this, we're going to talk about this other topic. So that way, if they get distracted for a little bit, they can get pulled back in. We call these connectives. Connectives are parts of our speech where we're connecting one major part to another. The four main connectives are internal previews, internal summaries, transition phrases, and signposts. An internal preview is just like it sounds. This is in the middle of your speech when you're about to talk about a complex idea. You just simply give a short statement explaining what you're about to do. So you might say, over the next 5 minutes of my speech, I'm going to cover these 3 topics. I'm going to explain this, and then I'm going to explain this, and then I'm going to explain this. So you're previewing for the audience what comes next. That way, if they get distracted over the next couple minutes, they can jump back in because you already told them how the speech is going to be ordered. An internal summary is the exact opposite. This is where you say, over the past 5 minutes, I've talked about these 3 things, so I want to summarize for you real quick what I've covered. Again, this helps the audience when they've been distracted, or maybe the information is just so complex that even when they've been paying attention, they haven't been able to understand it until you explain it in a more summarized form. Transitions are very important. I do not require any internal previews or any internal summaries in our speeches. Those are meant for longer speeches typically. Our speeches are going to be 8 minutes at most, so they're fairly short speeches. However, every speech needs a good transition. A transition statement is where you help your audience know that you're done talking about one concept and you're ready to talk about another concept. So you're transitioning their minds from one idea to another. So you know that most speeches will have 3 main points. So you need your audience to know when you're done talking about main point 1 and now you're talking about main point 2. Otherwise, they're not going to be sure how they blend together. So transitions help the audience know when you're moving from one main point to another. So you might say, now that we've finished discussing this, I'm going to start discussing this. Okay? And you can get creative with these. I once had a student who was giving a speech on how to do magic tricks with playing cards. And as he did, he had effective transitions such as, now let's shuffle the deck and talk about this other topic. Or now that we're done talking about this topic, let's put that card back in the deck and let's pull out a different card and talk about this. So he used creative ideas that connected to his topic to help us know when he was done talking about one topic and ready to talk about another topic. So these transitions, really, they're mini previews and mini summaries that help the audience move from one idea to the other. So you can use words that bridge the gap between the two. You might do something that triggers the audience. And honestly, at the beginning when you're learning this, I'm okay with you using numbers, right? So you can simply say, now that I'm done talking about my second main point, I'm ready to move on to my third main point. It's clear, it's easy, and it helps the audience to know where you're going. Maybe you use a flashback, or maybe you use your body to help with the transition. So maybe you're standing at one side of the room, and then as you move to your next main point, you transition your body by moving over to the other part of the room to show you're moving on to your next main point. Sign points are, again, just simple things throughout the speech, even within your main points where you're showing the audience where they are. So you might say, again, we're talking about this topic, and I'm telling you this right now. And these aren't meant to be demeaning to your audience, or you're not talking down to your audience. You're just pointing out to them, now that we've talked about this, let me talk about this. Or remember, here's where we are in my speech. So signposts help your audience to know where you're at. Every speech you give this semester should have at least 4 transitions. Okay, so you should have a clear transition letting us know when you're done from the introduction and ready to move on to main point 1, a transition from main point 1 to main point 2, transition from main point 2 to main point 3, transition from main point 3 to the conclusion. So it should be very clear throughout your entire speech where you are. If you are talking about a topic and I think you're in main point 2, but the reality is you're already in main point 3, that means you've lost your audience. That means you're not being an effective speaker. So these transitions help your audience to know where you are. So as you end your introduction, you're going to transition into your main point 1. As you end main point 1, you're going to transition into main point 2. These are things I would write out. They should be sentences that you write out and include in your outline so that they're prepared and you know how you're going to transition from one statement to the next.